Hi everybody, hope you're all well. Formula 1 2022 finally upon us. It's only been less than 100 days since Abu Dhabi and it's felt like years and months, especially if you spend a lot of your time on Twitter. But a new start, completely fresh, blank sheet of canvas, everybody starting from zero, and I'm here to bring you my predictions for this season. We're going to go through the Constructors, and then we're going to go through the Drivers Championship about where I think everybody is going to finish. I'm going to give you some reasons why, and if you disagree with them, which probably will, then you can tell me why in the comments below, and hopefully we can get a conversation going. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Alright then, starting with the Constructors Championship, in 10th place, I've gone for Williams. Had a pretty good Barcelona, I'd say. They looked promising, looked as though they were definitely in the midfield mix. But then after Bahrain, a couple of reliability problems, particularly on that second day when the rear brake caught fire. And just not that great pace, really, that was shown in that second test. I think has really taken the wind out of the sails that they are sort of nearer the top of the midfield pack. I definitely don't think they're cut adrift at the bottom. I actually think the midfield down to the bottom is actually going to be really close this year. But for me, based on what we've seen in Bahrain, I'm having Williams down at the bottom. Next up, in 9th place, I've got Alfa Romeo. A very promising test, actually, from them. And I don't actually think they're the 9th fastest car right now. I just think as the year goes on, they'll eventually be caught up by some of the other teams and overtaken by the time we get to Abu Dhabi. Really promising Bahrain, especially. Valtteri Bottas putting in some really good time, some really good running. Car looks a little bit fragile. However, as we know, they're the only team to meet the weight limit. It looks very well engineered, a very short wheelbase, and a lot of promise for Alfa Romeo. And I think they could certainly get a few good results in the early part of the season. Can they sustain that, though, going forward? I just kind of have my doubts on whether they can. And Alfa Romeo, I'm just not sold that they can keep up with the likes of the Alpines and Aston Martins of this world as we get into those latter stages and then eventually be overtaken by them. However, a very good promising start for them, and they could very well prove us wrong. In 8th place, I'm going to go for Haas. After Barcelona, their car looked certainly the most developed, but it wasn't really, setting the world alight in terms of the lap times. However, of course, as we know with all the problems that have gone on with Haas over the last couple of weeks, cutting ties with Uralkali and Nikita Mazepin, there seems to be a lot of positivity around the team, and then going into Bahrain, definitely looked as though they'd taken a step forward. And with Kevin Magnussen coming in, there's a lot of positivity around the team. And then after Bahrain as well, where they were setting times and Kevin Magnussen was the fastest on day 2 and Mick Schumacher the second fastest on day 3, I think there's a lot of positivity around what Haas can do. And I think right now they may very well have the 5th quickest car, as a lot of experts are predicting as well. Just like Alfa Romeo, I just kind of doubt whether they'll be able to keep up with that and keep up with Alpine and Aston Martin continually putting in the development they're going to do over the course of the season. But I think they could definitely get a few surprise results in there. They look really promising. I think, they're looking like a team certainly far more on the up and very encouraging to see. But Haas in 8th. Now the next 3 were really hard for me to decide between because there's positives and negatives to all of them. But in 7th place, I've gone for Aston Martin. I think the positives were they got a lot of mileage in Bahrain. The car looked reliable, and it looked as though it was running well. Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll getting in a lot of laps around the Sakir circuit. However, just not really lighting up the timing screens, really, at all. And it looked as though on their pace, they looked slower than Alfa Romeo, and looked like quite a bit slower as well. I'm not sure whether that's just a characteristic of the car and the hotter temperatures, but there's just nothing in there that I saw that made me think, Aston Martin, sort of the 5th fastest, really. And in such a competitive and tight midfield as I think it will be this year, I can just see them kind of falling off a bit. I think they'll definitely get to grips with it as it comes later in the year, especially with the likes of Sebastian in there and leading the team and hopefully trying to push them further up the grid. But I think just there was nothing really showing from Bahrain that made me think, yes, Aston Martin are going to start to challenge maybe that kind of like top 3, top 4. In 6th place, I've gone for AlphaTauri. Sort of the observers and the onlookers from what I've seen saying that AlphaTauri looked like a really good package. And the development route that they've gone down, of course, would be similar to Red Bull, is a really strong foundation to work off. Both Tsunoda and Gasly looked as though that they were happy with what they had following the test in Bahrain. But yet again, I just wasn't that convinced with the times that we were seeing, which is why I've put them 6th and Alpine in 5th. Now, Alpine themselves had a lot of reliability problems, particularly in Barcelona. But once they got to Bahrain, both Ocon and Alonso really grinding in the laps, putting in some really strong-looking long-run pace. And Alonso getting the 4th fastest time on the 3rd day. I don't know, there was just something about them where I just thought, yeah, I think that's like Alpine look as though they've kind of got it together a little bit. I thought they were going to really struggle, particularly after Barcelona. I thought they were actually going to be really down towards the bottom. But again, with a really strong driver pairing of Alonso and Ocon, I think they can score points on a pretty regular basis. I think that is what's going to give them just that little bit of an edge over the likes of AlphaTauri and Aston Martin. So yeah, that's who I've got in 5th. Next up, 4th place, McLaren. Certainly a tale of two tests for the Papaya squad. Barcelona, I was certainly thinking they could really be up there as one of the fastest, maybe even second fastest, I think, probably behind Ferrari leaving Barcelona. But Bahrain certainly didn't go smoothly for them. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo was out with COVID for the 3 days. Lando Norris had to take over duties for the whole test. And then they had brake problems throughout. And as Will Buxton said, the car looked so fast they couldn't stop it, which I thought was quite funny. I think without a doubt, the car is very competitive. And if they can get on top of those problems, they certainly can challenge the top 3 teams. But if not, they're going to start looking over their shoulder. And with the pack seemingly quite a lot closer together than we have seen in recent years, they could find themselves really sucked into that midfield battle. But yeah, let's see if they can get on top of that. Right, in 3rd place, kind of buying into the hype here, I've gone for Mercedes. And I'm still a little bit, I don't know if that's the right decision. After Barcelona, they certainly looked as though they were on the back foot. And then they come into Bahrain and they've completely redesigned the car and they've got those really slim side pods going on. And I'm thinking, yeah, they're probably going to do exactly the same thing again. But then didn't really trouble the top of the timesheets really during the whole of Bahrain. And the car it was probably the worst for porpoising as well, down the straights at the end, going into the braking zones. I would be a fool to bet against Mercedes engineers and be able to fix these problems. But with the top 2 teams, I think, looking so good and so competitive right at the start, I doubt whether Mercedes will be able to claw back the deficit that may be built up even after the first 4 or 5 races. Because Mercedes in previous years, say the car isn't quite working to the way that they want to, or there's maybe a couple of teething problems with it, the worst they'll finish is 3rd or 4th, because there's maybe only one other team that's kind of competitive and can trouble them. But now with 2, and potentially 3 if McLaren get on top of their problems, they could start be finishing 7th, maybe 8th, and then falling a long way behind the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull before they get on top of those problems and start clawing back those points in the latter stages of the season. I think it's a really big period for Mercedes. If they get a strong start, I think there's no doubt that they're going to really be in the thick of the championship battle. But as of right now, one day before the season starts, I'm just hedging my money more on the other 2 right now. But never ever write off Mercedes. So that leaves 1st and 2nd, one of Ferrari and one of Red Bull. Let's start with Ferrari. After 5 of the 6 days of testing, I was all out Ferrari are the best. Ferrari have completely smashed the regulation changes. They've really timed it well in terms of the development they put in the 2021 car. And with the 2022, right from day one, from they left the garage in Barcelona, they looked consistent, they looked quick, they looked reliable, and they just looked absolutely mega. And then we get to the last day, when Red Bull put on those new parts onto their car, and they just absolutely blitzed it away. And they just looked so quick. And again, for those watching trackside, even with the sort of initial spec car that was in Barcelona, they were saying the car looked really stable, that Verstappen was getting really good handle on things, and that it looked as though it was a really good package that they put together. And then those bits they put on towards the end, really added a lot of speed. Yeah, this one's been tough, and I'm still kind of doubting my decision now. I've gone for Ferrari to win the championship. The reason being is that both are very strong packages, but I just rate the Ferrari driver lineup more. That they can be more consistent and more consistently quick and get more out of that package. I think with Red Bull, the difference we see between Verstappen and Perez, that could be what undoes it in terms of winning them the Constructors Championship, despite the fact that I think Red Bull have the faster car. So yeah, I'm going to go for Ferrari to win the 2022 Constructors Championship. Alright then, now we've got that out of the way, now it's time to focus on the Drivers' Championship. We're going to, again, go from bottom all the way through to the top. Starting in 20th place, I've gone for, probably no surprise considering I've put them bottom of the Constructors' Championship, I've gone for Nicholas Latifi. Of course, this will be his third season in F1, and I think we saw some really good improvement from him last season, putting together some really good results and some really strong drives. Still a bit behind George Russell, although apart from the end, he did out-qualify him a couple of times. It's a big year for him now, with a new teammate. If he can take his opportunity, he could take it to him, but I'm just not sure he'll be able to extract the most out of that car. So yeah, Latifi in 20th. Okay, in 19th place, I've gone for Guanyu, of course, his rookie season, and whilst I think Alfa Romeo have a really decent car underneath them at the start of the season, if he doesn't hit the ground running, then he could very easily get sucked into the battle once the likes of Alpine and Aston Martin and AlphaTauri have developed their cars and overtaken Alfa Romeo, as I'm predicting they will do in the pecking order during the latter stages. Looking at his F2 career, he was there for 3 seasons, didn't necessarily set the world alight in it. I think it could be tough, and definitely a season of learning from him. And he could prove to be a surprise, but yeah, going for 19th. In 18th, I'm going for Mick Schumacher. I'm expecting another steady season from Mick. I know in his junior career he normally takes sort of 1 season to adjust, and then the next season he kind of really takes a bit of a step forward. And I think he is going to, and he's going to get some good point scoring races in there. But I just see him not quite having enough before the likes of the Astons kind of overtake Haas maybe later on in the season, if that does happen. And yeah, sort of finishing down in 18th, but some good performances from Mick, and definitely some good promising signs for the future from him. 17th, I'm going for Lance Stroll. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to take the opportunities when they come about. When we have a big crazy race, Sebastian, as he showed last season with Baku and with Hungary, although he was later disqualified, he's very good at taking advantage of those situations, when there are big points on offer and you can maybe nab a podium or you can nab a 4th or a 5th. He was quite good at doing that. Lance Stroll was pretty decent at sort of ticking over the points tally, sort of race to race. But I think with Aston Martin maybe not being quite as competitive, I think Lance Stroll's going to be this driver that finishes 11th and 12th quite a lot. Solid races, good performances, but ultimately no points for them. So I think that's going to cost him in the final standings this season. So yeah, 17th. 16th, I'm going for Alex Albon. I think my main thinking behind this is that he will take advantage of a crazy race at some point. I think across the season, I'm expecting him to be better than Latifi and, maybe sneak into the points every now and again. But then when it comes to that sort of big, crazy race, he's that overtaking maestro. And he's going to put in a really big performance. And then that's going to sort of catapult him above the likes of Stroll and Schumacher. So yeah, Albon in 16th. 15th place, I'm going for Valtteri Bottas. I think we're going to see him drive with a lot more freedom. I'm intrigued to see how he gets on without the spotlight of Mercedes. I think he's going to take the chances when they come to him. But, as I said, whilst I think Alfa have a strong car now, as we get later on, whether he's got enough to keep the likes of the Astons and the Alpines behind him, I'm just not so sure. Probably similar to Stroll, a lot of 11ths, a lot of 12ths probably chucked in there. So yeah, I'm going to go for Valtteri in 15th. In 14th, I'm going to go for Kevin Magnussen. It's great to see him back, and I think it's a really good move from Haas, someone who knows the team really well. He's not too long out of Formula 1, and I think he can get back up to speed pretty quickly. I just think with Magnussen, we're going to see a couple of proper heroes drives that he did in his first spell at Haas. He's just going to get a couple of crazy top 5 finishes out of absolutely nowhere, and that's going to shoot him up the final standing. So yeah, going to go K-Mag in 14th. In 13th, I'm going for Sebastian Vettel. Like I said with Stroll, Vettel's very good at taking the chances when they present themselves to him. He uses his experience, he keeps a cool head, and we've seen him. He can get a podium if there is just this crazy race that happens. And maybe that could happen again this year. You know, not necessarily maybe podiums, but certainly some big point scoring finishes, and maybe some of those lower down, maybe an 8th, 9th, 10th. So yeah, I'm thinking Sebi Boy is going to go 13th. 12th, Yuki Tsunoda. I think we're going to see a lot more consistency from him than last season. I think towards the end, we would definitely start to see him find his feet after a pretty poor start to the season, if we're being honest. And I think he's going to regularly kind of be scoring a few of those lower points positions. I just don't think we're going to get like the more outstanding drives that we've seen from his teammate at times last season. But yes, hopefully a more consistent season is in the line for Yuki Tsunoda. Coming in at number 11th, I'm going for Fernando Alonso, and then in 10th, I'm going for Esteban Ocon. Kind of for the same reasons in terms of sort of where they are in the big table. Is that just general solid point scoring races, pretty much across the board. I think is what we're going to see from them this year. I think with Ocon finishing ahead of Alonso, I mean, this could go either way, but it was really close last season. Of course, Esteban was helped enormously by the win in Hungary, but then Alonso getting the podium in Qatar. But I think we're definitely seeing Esteban start to grow and getting better each time he's been with that team. 2020 wasn't the best from him. 2021, I think we did see a big step forward from him. And I think this year we'll see the same again. I'm just backing Ocon. I don't know why. It's just a feeling that he'll get a couple of those kind of 5th places, those 4th places that maybe come up on offer. And he's just going to finish ahead of Fernando. 9th place, I'm going to go for Pierre Gasly. Probably one of the star drivers of the last couple of years. He's been brilliant for AlphaTauri. Consistent point scoring last season. I think considering where the car is, what we've seen from him in terms of qualifying especially has been nothing short of remarkable. And hopefully he can continue this form on as he maybe starts to look at what the next step is for him. And for him to put himself in the shop window, I think he's going to be even more motivated than he normally is. And it would be great to see Gasly maybe get a cheeky podium this year. I think it's definitely on the cards. And I think he's very good at extracting the most out of the package that AlphaTauri give him. So, yeah, once again, I'm going for a pretty good season from Pierre Gasly, 9th place. In 8th place, we're going to go for Daniel Ricciardo. I'm feeling good about Daniel Ricciardo for this season. Of course, he's had a year now to adjust to being at McLaren, and like we saw at Renault, after a sort of hit and miss first year in 2019, really hit his stride in 2020. And I think we'll see something pretty similar from him this year, maybe a few podiums. He's saying he's been learning a lot about himself, a lot about his driving style, about what makes him fast. And I certainly hope that we see Daniel Ricciardo back to his best. But I think he's just going to miss out to his teammate, Lando Norris, who I've got in 7th. Lando last season was absolutely brilliant, as most people kind of recognise. I think he's come on leaps and bounds since he's come into Formula 1. And seeing him last season, he could have finished a lot higher than he did in the end. And I am predicting that he will get his first win this year. I think it's just absolutely inevitable, frankly, that we'll see it from Lando. And yeah, just another great season to confirm the incredible talent that he already has. Moving on now, in 6th place, I'm going for Sergio Perez. Red Bull, for me right now, have the fastest car. But as we saw from Perez and Verstappen, there is definitely a pace deficit between the two. Perez obviously having had a year at the team now, maybe he's a little bit more in tune of how he can get the best out of that car. But even as we were getting towards the end of the season, there was still a pretty noticeable gap between them. And I'm just not sure he's going to be able to extract the most out of that car. And with the top being so close as we think it is, and Mercedes certainly not out of that fight at all, and maybe McLaren troubling them a little bit as well, I just think Perez is just going to go fall down the order a little bit. And he may just get swallowed up by the likes of the Ferraris and the Mercedes come the final standings. So yeah, I just don't think he has the out-and-out speed to challenge for the title, but definitely could be wrong and more than willing to be proved wrong on that. Moving on, 5th place, I've gone for George Russell. Obviously him coming to Mercedes, very exciting move. I think a lot of the F1 community wanted to see, can he challenge Lewis Hamilton? Can he be the next young star? I'm kind of going for sort of Charles Leclerc 2019 kind of vibe with him. Gonna upset the apple cart a bit, give Lewis something to worry about in a lot of races this year and provide some shock results. But just whether I think he'll get in front of Lewis based on a whole season, I'm not sure. Lewis has done this for so long, he's been in that team for so long, and as dedicated as George is, and clearly as hungry and as talented as George is, I just think he's going to fall slightly behind Lewis Hamilton, who I've put in 4th place here. I think it's going to be really close. I think in the end it's going to be very, very close. But Lewis has done this for so long that I think he's just going to win out on George. Only by a little bit though. Only by a little bit. In terms of Lewis, I mean, there's nothing else more to say other than he's absolutely incredible. And to write him off is a really dangerous thing. But as I said, with where Mercedes currently are, I just don't see Lewis getting the better of the Red Bulls and the Ferraris over the course of the season. I think definitely by the end, when Mercedes have caught up, as they inevitably will, because their team is just incredible and the engineers that they have there are fantastic, and they seem to be able to work around every problem they encounter. I think he'll definitely be very strong come towards the end, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to overhaul the top 3. In 3rd place, I have gone for Carlos Sainz. Before the season, I was thinking Carlos Sainz 2022 World Champion. Very, very probably. I think his first season with Ferrari was incredibly impressive. Considering Leclerc got 1 podium and Carlos got 4, was it, in the end? It was really surprising. And he, of course, beat Charles over the course of the championship. But remembering that Charles had a lot of bad luck, he could have won at Silverstone. He was meant to be on pole in Monaco and, of course, didn't start the race. I just don't think Sainz has quite got the out-and-out speed of Charles. However, he certainly has the consistency to keep himself in the mix for the title and grasp at those opportunities when maybe Charles isn't quite there or has fallen down the order for whatever reason. So definitely someone to look at and definitely a dark horse in the championship fight. Just not sure he's quite gonna win it out on this time. I think he's proven so many people wrong from his first year of Ferrari. I think a lot of us were thinking, including me, number 2 driver, going to be the deputy to Charles, but he proved a lot of us wrong. Whilst I don't think he has quite, and not too far off, the out-and-out speed of Charles, definitely has the consistency, really smart driver. And more than capable of getting himself into the mix this season and capitalising on the opportunities when they come to him. Definitely we're going to see him get some wins, pole positions maybe as well, maybe just not quite enough to win the title on this occasion, but definitely in the mix. Okay, and we are now down to the top 2. So who have I chosen to win the 2022 World Drivers' Championship? I have gone 4. Max Verstappen. This is no real sight on Charles because putting him second, it really feels like, oh God, I feel bad. I don't know why I feel bad. For me, Charles Leclerc has absolutely everything to win this title. He's proven it in every form of racing he's done, right from the junior categories all the way through to Formula 1, more than capable of winning the title. However, that Ferrari pairing is very, very competitive. And if they're close at the start of the season and they're kind of sort of, one's doing better in one race and then the next race is maybe Carlos and then it's Charles and then it's Carlos and then it's Charles. And there's not really a sort of established hierarchy like there is at, or there was at Mercedes anyway, and there is at Red Bull currently. then that could end up costing both drivers come the end of the season. Charles, he does have a mistake in him. Certainly not like a reckless driver or anything like that, but we have seen it creep in from time to time. And during his whole time in Formula One, if we're being honest, whether that was Monaco last year or he clipped Gasly, I think it was in Austria as well. And then when I compare him to Max, as we know, Max really pushes it to the boundary in terms of what's acceptable. In terms of fair racing in Formula One, he races hard. He's an aggressive driver. We know this. However, when I look at last season and I think it through, the fact that the only times, he didn't finish first or second were, Monza, Silverstone not his fault, Baku not his fault, Hungary not his fault. That consistency is absolutely remarkable. Now, of course, Red Bull and Mercedes having the two fastest cars was going to play a big part in that, and did play a big part of the reason that Max only finished first or second. But just the consistency we saw from him was incredible, and we just know with the outright speed he has, he's going to be able to get the most out of that Red Bull, and extract more from that package than we're going to see from Sergio Perez. And I just think he's going to edge it out this season and become the 2022 Formula One World Champion. Alright, there are my predictions. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and also make sure to leave your predictions as well down there. If you could subscribe to this channel and leave a like on the video as well, that would be really greatly appreciated. And I look forward to seeing you after Bahrain. Take care, enjoy the race, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.